Georgians have a lot to consider headed into the midterm elections coming up in November. A lot of statewide races. One of the big ones is for Attorney General. And we're joined right now by one of the candidates in this race, the Republican nominee, State Senator Brian Strickland. Senator, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, so let's start here. You've been running for some time. You're the Republican nominee now, but for people who maybe are just getting to know you, why are you in this race? Why do you want to be Georgia's next Attorney General?
So number one, my wife and I have two little boys, 6-year-old Beecher and 8-year-old Charles Willis. They started first grade and second grade this week, first week back in school. And I want to make sure that when my kids are growing up in this state and when they get my age, they have the same opportunities that I have. Georgia's in a really great place. We're the number one state that people are now flocking to from around the country, number one state for business, for families. We have a lot of things we can do better. But I want to continue to improve upon that and be an Attorney General that fights every single day for our families like mine and someone that puts people over the politics. I'm not doing this for one particular person, for one particular political party. I want to be an Attorney General that everybody can be proud of.
Attorney General is a role that encompasses a lot of different facets of the law and a lot of different facets of life in Georgia. It touches a lot of what happens in our state. When you look at our state right now, what's the number one most pressing issue you see, and if you're elected, how would you address it?
I know you hear the buzzword a lot, affordability, but it's real. I think you have a lot of families that sit around after their kids go to bed at night and they're trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills. Is it even worth working given the rising cost of childcare? There's a lot of big, hot button political issues we could talk about, but it all starts back with what you feel at home. And so many people feel the rising cost of living. You also have issues of crime still being a big issue in Georgia, organized crime, particularly with gangs still out of control, fentanyl in every single corner of our state, human trafficking still exists here. And so there's, as I started off saying, Georgia has a lot of great things going for us. We have a lot of challenges as well.
If you're elected Attorney General, you point to affordability. If you're elected, how do you make things more affordable here?
Yeah, so you got to use the office that you have to focus on these kind of things. So as a legislator, I worked on child care affordability. Last year, I led a study committee that results in legislation that'll give more money for parents when it comes to paying for child care, also incentivize more employers to offer child care for workers. I've supported our tax cuts, giving money back to our citizens. We've taken steps as a legislature on affordability, but as Attorney General, there's an office that deals with consumer protection. The person you elect in this office is charged with protecting Georgia families from scams, price gouging, those that prey on our most vulnerable. A lot of times it's our young people, it's our elderly, those with special needs, but with AI now, anybody could be vulnerable to this. And so you got to use these tools in this office to go after those that are preying on people who are already struggling. When you have the hurricanes going through South Georgia, we saw this, of course, people unfortunately move in and take advantage of people. And so I want to be an Attorney General that puts our families first above any company, any bad actors out there. If you're going to take advantage of our working families in our state, we're going to come after you.
You brought up AI there. If affordability is one of the buzzwords of the political season we're in right now, AI is another one of them. And
That's right.
The growth of data centers, including right here in Georgia, has been at the front of a lot of discussions in communities all across our state. Some people are supportive, others very much not. This is going to become a topic of litigation in our state.
Yes.
I haven't read every filing across the state, but I suspect there's already plenty of briefs flying around. If you're elected Attorney General, what's going to be your position on data center construction in Georgia?
Well, first off, you want local governments making the decisions about whether to approve them to start with. That way you have people as close as you can to those that have elected them that can hear from those people. And hopefully they're going to listen to constituents about where these data centers go, which counties want to have them, which communities don't want to have them. And they're not for everybody. And there's challenges that come with data centers. There's a lot of money that comes with data centers. There's also a lot of negative things that come with data centers. And you want those decisions happening on the ground. And you see these large county commission and city council meetings, those things are being considered right now. Then you step back and say, what role does the Attorney General have in that? And in particular, we are the lawyers for the Environmental Protection Division. Our job as Attorney General is to say, okay, so this was approved by this local government, but are you protecting our waterways? Are you following our environmental laws? Are you actually getting the permits that are required? Do we have the oversight that's required? And that's such an important role that I want to double down on and make sure that our office is present for every type of big development. Because it's great to have these jobs. It's great to have the money that comes, especially in rural Georgia where you need jobs. But you have to also step back and say, is someone making sure this is going to work in the long run? Is it going to affect our drinking water? How does it impact our skies? How does it impact our trees and so many things we enjoy, the natural beauties of our state? And that is my job, to be the person that steps in and says, okay, you approve this, but we're going to do it the right way to protect all of Georgians moving forward.
Let's talk about, if you're elected, who will be your predecessor, which is Attorney General Chris Carr. He'll be leaving office. He's not running for another term as Attorney General. When you look at Chris Carr's time in the job, in the role of Attorney General, from your vantage point, what did he do well, what did he get right, and what did he get wrong?
Well, he would tell you the one thing that he has had to build upon and continues to build upon until he finished his office is the criminal law jurisdiction of his office. A lot of people don't realize some attorney generals have their own grand jury, meaning they can prosecute any crime, anytime, and they really are the top law enforcement official. We still are the top law enforcement official in our state, but we work with prosecutors. We don't have our own grand jury in Georgia. And so it's important you have working relationships with your prosecutors, again, that you elect locally in your circuits to prosecute crimes. And under Chris Carr's leadership, we created the human trafficking unit, we created the gang unit, we created the retail theft unit, 3 units where we have people that train and are specialized in those types of prosecutions, all organized crime. And so we got to continue to build upon that. I'm proud in my race to have over 100 elected law enforcement officials that have endorsed me, and more are coming. And these are folks in the trenches fighting gangs, fighting human trafficking, dealing with fentanyl, of course, retail theft. Every corner of our state. When I travel our state, I hear the same problems you have in the mountains as you have on the coast, as you have in the cities and the farms in South Georgia. These crimes are everywhere. And what you need is someone in this office that's going to go and prosecute the crimes and go after these violent offenders, not worry about the politics, not try to make headlines, go and do the job. And that's why so many folks are backing me. And I think Chris has done a good job building that up, and I want to double down on that.
You're a practicing attorney, but correct me if I'm wrong here, your background, your areas of practice are in the civil side of things.
That's right, mostly.
Do you have any background prosecuting criminal cases?
I do not. To be candid, I was an intern in law school with our district attorney's office, but otherwise I've been in a civil law firm the whole time.
Do you think that lack of criminal experience may be a challenge for you as you point to wanting to continue Chris Carr's legacy of leaning into criminal prosecution at the Attorney General level?
Well, it's not, because if you ask the district attorneys around our state, they will tell you who they want to be the next Attorney General. I have so many of them lined up with us, and all these sheriffs, bipartisan Republicans, Democrats in our state that have endorsed me. And that's because I have a reputation beyond just my practice of law. I've been the legislator for 14 years. I have led on some very, very important bills. For example, gang enforcement bill, working with Brian Kemp to make sure our prosecutors have the tools to go after those that are recruiting young people to join gangs. My opponent in this race has a background as a prosecutor briefly, but she voted against that bill. Also supported a bill that gives more tools, as requested, to our law enforcement officials to go after fentanyl, those that are bringing this drug into our state. And I supported that, led on that bill. My opponent voted against that. And so I'm someone that law enforcement has leaned on over the years to pass meaningful legislation. I have the reputation of someone who gets it, who trusts our prosecutors, trusts our men and women of law enforcement, and that's why they want me to be the next Attorney General.
You referenced some of those endorsements. You picked up another big one earlier this month. I want to say, well, it's August now, so it was back in July. The summer's flying by, but you picked up a big endorsement. President Donald Trump has endorsed you in this race. Is there anything that you disagree with the president on?
Yes, I disagree with everybody. My wife and I disagree on things. I disagree with every politician I serve with on some things. And so I'm not going to sit here and name every little thing I've disagreed with him on. And I can tell you I met President Trump for the first time a couple weeks back, and he decided he wanted to endorse me. He's asked for nothing from me. He wants someone to do the job, and that's why I'm proud to have endorsements of all types of elected officials, Republicans and Democrats. And so I'm proud to add Donald Trump to that list.
I know you said you don't want to list everything you disagree with him on. Obviously, there are lots of points of agreement. He wouldn't endorse you if there weren't. But can you point to any points of disagreement where you've seen him handle something where you thought you'd take a different tack on it?
I mean, look, everybody will always say sometimes the way you couch things, the way you style things can be better with a lot of us. But I'm not going to sit here and pick apart things that I've didn't like that he did. I can't imagine trying to be president of the United States, all that he has to deal with. When we saw him in Cobb County, he had left coming from, I think it was Delaware. We had soldiers brought back that died in Iran. And I think about, he went from that, came down here and talked about these Trump accounts to help working families and to make sure that young people in our state and our country have something when they start that can grow to help them pay for college, to help them get that, buy that first car with their first job, buy that first house. there's so much that weighs on anybody in that kind of office. So I'm not going to sit there, Republican or Democrat, and pick apart every decision that he makes.
Let's talk about one of the big decisions Attorney General Chris Carr made a few years ago, and this is in the wake of the 2020 presidential election. There were some states around the country involved in some litigation challenging the results of the presidential election that year, and he opted not to join some of those suits. When you look back on the 2020 election and Chris Carr's decision there, if you were in office as Attorney General, would you have done the same thing and stood by the validity of Georgia's presidential election?
So I was a state senator at that time, and I was open about how a special session wasn't going to accomplish anything for us during that time. I'd have to go back and look at case by case. I mean, Chris Carr had the benefit of diving in case by case, seeing evidence to make a decision whether or not to join cases. But I think for all of us, Republicans, Democrats, it's time to move on from 2020. After the 2020 election, we did a sweeping bill in 21, Senate Bill 202. Whenever you still remember the number of a bill, you know it was an important bill that went back in and really codified a lot of things with our elections and added IDs to all forms of voting, created more transparency in our election tabulation process that fixed a lot of the issues we had in 2020. And my hope, at that time, the partisans and the people, the Democrats in Georgia, said this was going to make it harder to vote, and they call it Jim Crow 2.0. We lost the All-Star game that year. Well, I literally took that bill, which was a long bill, because I worked on it, took it with me and went on the campaign trail that year. And I went to Rotary clubs, Kiwanis, everybody that would talk to me, had the bill with me, said, this is what this bill does. It requires IDs for all forms of voting. It puts sunshine on the drop boxes and the tabulation process. I went through the entire bill. And when I got done, nobody was against it, despite all the noise you heard about that bill. And so I think it's time that we all move on from 2020. And as a candidate, I'm ready to do that. And my job is to make sure our election laws are enforced moving forward. We have great laws on the books here in Georgia. And I don't know why anybody would be opposed to voter ID. I'm not sure why anybody would be opposed to making sure that only American citizens are voting. No one should oppose going after fraud in our elections. As Attorney General, if there's allegations of fraud moving forward, I will do my job, whether it's a Republican committing the fraud or a Democrat committing the fraud. Wherever the allegations are, I'm going to go and investigate that, and if it happens, we'll make examples out of people.
Let's talk about a couple last topics here. We want to be respectful of your time. Affordability has been a topic we've touched on a couple times here. I want to ask you one last question on that front. There has been increased attention on the issue of oftentimes out-of-state landlords, frequently corporate landlords, who are buying up homes, buying up apartments, and some investigations have alleged raising the prices that people who want to live in those spaces have to pay, either to rent them or to, if you're in the home buying market, it's just making things more expensive to find a place to live. If you're elected Attorney General, what will you do about corporate landlords?
Well, I'm going to enforce the laws we have in the books now. I was proud to work on legislation, I believe it was this past session and the year before, that set certain minimum standards for landlords to make sure tenants have basic rights to things like air conditioning in their houses, to make sure that our landlord-tenant laws aren't abused when someone has paid their rent and they don't have due process where they're kicked out. I would love to move Georgia more towards a place where more people who want to buy a home can buy a home. And you're right, when you have more people coming in and buying up in bulk, it's driving up not just the price of rent, but also driving up more home prices, because everyday Georgians who wanted to buy their first home could have bought that home that's been bought up by some big corporation. And so, again, I got a history of working on these issues. We also passed legislation in the past I supported to limit what out-of-state buyers can buy in our state, and I'll enforce those laws. And I'm going to make sure if you're coming into our state to do business, you're going to follow all of our rules and not take advantage of Georgia families.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground. I think this is a good place to end. We always ask this last question in interviews like this with candidates, so we want to pose it to you. To an undecided voter out there still making up their minds, your closing pitch to them would be what?
Brian Strickland has a reputation. Growing up in this state, raising my two boys, I grew up on a farm in Henry County, come from a working class family. When I was elected to the legislature at an early age, I started from day one taking on real issues. I have not just gone out and given your typical political speeches, sent you a mailer and says, here's 3 red meat or 3 things Democrats want to hear that I voted on. I went and showed you some real work that I've done. I worked on mental health reform. I've led on criminal justice reform, child care affordability. getting folks into our workforce, out of our prison system. There's so many things I've worked on in the past. I'm a hard worker. If you want to elect an attorney general that's going to give great speeches and just fire up a base, do press conferences, and work for a national party, you have another choice in this race. If you want a workhorse who's going to go in every single day and fight for families just like my own, then Brian Strickland's your candidate to be an ex-attorney general.
All right, State Senator Brian Strickland running for Attorney General. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.